I'm Jake Heyer. I'm from Pentaho Business Analytics, which is a Hitachi Group company. Here to introduce Judd Poeske. He's a customer success manager at Rhiza.
Rhiza. It's okay.
Rhiza. I was practicing too, but 6 habits of highly effective data-driven teams.
Thanks.
Cool.
Hey everybody, as Jake said, my name is Judd Poeske. I work for a company called Rhiza. And what we do is we actually provide a sales acceleration platform for both sales teams and marketers to, for the sales side, increase revenue, and for the marketers, increase their return on investment on what they're doing. And in my experience as a customer success manager, we've kind of identified 6 key things that are really helping sales folks and marketers really use data in their day-to-day jobs and be successful with it and really adopt data in their day-to-day pitches and what they're doing. Oh, do I have a, here we go. There we go. Okay, so the first thing that we've seen is that people are saying in the industry, look, we have a lot of data, but we're not getting the most use out of it. We're not getting the most out of it. So it's kind of like having this awesome Maserati, like fully loaded with a full tank of gas, but you don't know how to drive it. So that's kind of awkward, but learning to drive with data means giving your sales folks and your marketers the right tools and the right knowledge that they need to use data and be successful with data. So if your sales folks were like octopi, they'd have a million different hands, or not a million different hands, but 8 hands to like gather all of this data that they need to do their job. But sales folks don't. They're people. They have 2 hands, and they have a limited amount of time. And so what we've seen and what the industry is saying is about a quarter of the time sales folks are just spending collecting the data that they need to do their job. So a quarter of their time, sales folks are collecting the data that they need. For researchers, that's even worse. They're spending about 60 to 80% of their time just collecting that data. So you don't want to have something like this, like a messy library or a library that's spread across an entire city. You spend all of your time trying to find the piece of data that you need, or the sales folk trying to find exactly what's relevant to the customer. They're spending all of their time searching. And so that actually equates for Fortune 500 companies. If sales folks are spending a quarter of their time looking for just pieces of information, that equates to $2.6 billion for Fortune 500 companies in lost revenue annually. It's ridiculous. So what we need to do is actually have something like this. We need to have a well-organized library where everything's all in one place so folks can take full advantage of that library. So having all of your data in one place is key. That means that if all your data is in one place, folks of varying skill levels can take advantage of it fully. So if you're a salesperson, if you're a marketer, and you don't have a lot of knowledge about data, you're able to go into a data library or go into a tool where you're able to know exactly where that piece of information is, and you're not spending all of this time searching for things. For a researcher, for a data expert, they're going to be able to take full advantage of that entire library. So they're going to be able to go in and know exactly where all of the pieces that they need to do their job most effectively are, and they'll take full advantage of that library. The other added benefit of having all of your data and information in one place also means that it's not domain expert for one tool and one data set. You don't have to worry about someone getting hit by a bus or leaving your company. It's not going to go out the door, this domain knowledge about one specific tool or one specific data set. It's going to be shared knowledge that everybody in the company knows how to use. So it's not domain knowledge that leaves with just one person. So that leads me to my second point, if it comes up. But my second point is to make sure that we have data experts on hand. So it's an awesome picture of this awesome librarian who, she's an expert, right? You need to have data experts who understand each of those data sources that sales folks and marketers are using in depth so that they'll know all of the pieces that are in that data set, but then also how it might be able to be used. So this person knows what questions might be able to be asked, and they know what's in that data set. That doesn't mean that salespeople and marketers get a free ride. They have to know the basics of what's in that data. If they don't know the basics, anything that's given to them by a data expert, it's not going to ring true when they go and present to a customer. It's just going to sound false in their ears. And if sales folks know the basics, they'll be able to better answer questions that are asked of them. They'll be able to say, hey, you know what? I do know exactly what we can do, now that you're asking me this question. Or I know at least how I can ask my data expert, the person I can turn to. They can ask questions of what those data sources are, and they can also ask questions of the customer to actually start a dialogue there. So having the sales folks and marketers at least know the basics and investing in your people who are presenting this information is super important. So one of the hardest parts of this are tying these two teams together. In my experience with customer success and working with kind of a data product that's helping sales teams, tying these two teams together, research, data experts, and salespeople who are presenting data to customers, is honestly the hardest part of the entire thing. But when things are going well and everything's working, it can really be like magic. And so one of the things that we've found that actually helps these people bridge this gap is actually having a simple, repeatable story or a simple, repeatable report that you're building to give to these sales folks that they can still personalize to their customer, to their end customer. So it's built by research, but it's still consumed easily by sales folks and marketers. So what I like to say is Chipotle brings them together. So quick service restaurants have really figured this out. They're able to create a very mass manufactured thing like a burrito or something, but it's still personalized to their customer. So if you like chicken, you can put chicken in your burrito. If you like tofu, you can put tofu in it. If you like pinto beans or you like black beans, you can personalize your burrito or your data story any way that you'd like. It'll also help having this simple repeatable story or a simple repeatable report. It'll also help with tracking what you're doing and measuring that a little later, which are our next points. So to get to my next point, knowing what works and what doesn't work is super important in creating this simple repeatable story. So to give a pretty concrete example, we sat down with one of our customers and we brought together the research side and we brought the sales folks. We sat them down and the sales folks were trying to sell media ads for an Olympics program. And research had put together a 56-page presentation with lots of data to give to the sales side to essentially present to their customers. And it was awesome. They had so much data that they were giving to the sales folks. But we sat down and we said, okay, what's actually resonating with your customers? We asked the sales folks, and it turned out that 2 slides in this 56 slide presentation were really the revenue generating pieces of the story that they were telling. And so it was this story. This was taking a look at peak performance of television ratings during the Olympics programming throughout the couple months. And this slide presenting programs, some specific Olympic programs versus some other programs and events that were happening throughout the year. So comparing those 2 slides. What we were able to do was take those 2 slides and actually create that repeatable story. So rather than just talking about the Olympics every time sales went out, they were able to actually input whatever program they were trying to sell. So we created that simple, repeatable report that sales was able to go in and still tailor to their customer, but it was what the customer was saying was actually most interesting to them and most effective. So that kind of brings me to my next point. With those 56 slides, it's a lot of information, it's great, But if you're overwhelming people with too much information, they're going to shut down and they're not going to make a decision. A lot of research has been done into, if you're giving too much choice to consumers, if you're giving too much data to people, they're just actually not going to make a choice. So you have to keep it simple. So you could show something like this where it's the proof of 1 + 1 is 2, or you could say 1 + 1 is 2. And obviously that's a pretty extreme example, but it illustrates that point of you have to keep it simple. There are multiple ways of essentially presenting information. And for more concretely with our product, you could present information like this in a table really, really nicely. A researcher gets that. Or you could present it really nicely and visually on a map that the customer was able to really quickly and easily consume and be convinced by. So there are two ways to present that information. That last piece that we've seen for highly effective data-driven organizations is they're methodically measuring what they're doing. So that kind of goes back to having that repeatable story. Having that repeatable story means you're able to measure which pieces are working and which pieces aren't working. So having measurement in what you're doing in sales and marketing is super important. Now, folks have asked us, what's the best way of actually measuring some of these pieces? Again, it goes back to that repeatable story, but it also, some of our most successful companies are tying whether or not they're using sales collateral to their CRM system. So we can start saying, hey, you know what? Sally Joe, she just used, this presentation. It had these slides in it. What was most effective? And it was actually tying it back to that revenue piece. There was money attached to that, so they were able to measure whether or not they were having more sales, whether or not they were having more retention, and whether they were being convincing with what they were showing. So tying it to your CRM for sales folks and tying it to a marketing automation system for marketers, super important to have that measurement piece. If you're not measuring, you're going to end up having some successes, sure, but you won't be able to replicate that. So having that measurement piece, which goes back to having a repeatable story and testing what works and what doesn't, super important. So just kind of in review, and gone a bit quick, so we'll have some questions. But having all of your data in one place, that's reducing the amount of time sales folks and marketers are actually spending, and researchers are spending just finding the information that they need. Having those experts on hand to answer specific questions or go more in depth, super important, but you can't forget to invest in those who are presenting the information, those sales folks and marketers. They need to know the basics. They need to be invested in. Oops. Having that repeatable story allows you to create something that is actually measurable, and you can then test, see what works and what doesn't work. You can keep it simple because you can understand actually how much is too much for your customers by tying that into a CRM or a marketing automation system. You can start testing that. And then after testing it, you can start actually measuring what's working and what's not working. So I'll leave this up here. Rhiza is a venture-backed company, and what we're doing is, again, giving tools to sales folks and marketers and changing how they're using data in their day-to-day jobs to make them a lot more successful, again, increasing their return on investment and increasing that revenue piece for sales folks. So I'll stop here. I don't know how much time we have left. A lot of time? Like enough time? Awesome. So I'd love to answer any questions if you guys have anything specific. Go ahead. Come on. It's right after lunch. Somebody's got to have a question.
Is your company name an intentional Star Trek reference?
It's not a Star Trek reference. That would be pretty awesome. It's actually rhizomatic plants. We used to do a lot with satellite imaging. So rhizomatic plants have interconnecting root systems.
Rhiza is a shore leaf plant from Star Trek.
Oh, so then it is really a Star Trek reference.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, in the back there.
Do you have a product that you sell a service, or are you a consultant for Comcast? How do you go about making them better at sales?
Awesome, yeah. So we actually have an online platform that allows sales folks to actually go in and use that data. So it's a platform, it's not a consultancy, a product, or it is a product rather. So sales folks are able to go in and actually researchers templatize stories that they're going into, and sales folks can actually interact with a lot of this data that's being used. It's really awesome. We've had some really great success with some media companies as well as some other large brands. It's really great. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.